I knew the company was heading for a digital cliff the moment Derek Thorne walked in wearing a sweater vest that cost more than my first car and smelling of sandalwood and unearned confidence. He did not look at the server racks. He looked at the reflection of his own teeth in the glass partition. To a man like Derek, infrastructure was not a foundation. It was just plumbing, unsexy, invisible, and annoying when it cost money. I was standing by the cooling units, the hum of the fans drowning out his introductory speech about disruptive synergy to the marketing team. But I could feel the shift in the air pressure. It was not the weather, it was the sudden drop in intelligence in the executive wing. My name is Eric Vance. For 8 years, I have been the senior backend oversight lead for a software company that handles data sensitive enough to make a frantic lawyer sweat through a wool suit. My job is not to code features that make buttons pop with confetti. My job is to make sure that when 10 million people log in at once, the digital floor does not collapse into the basement of 404 errors. I am the janitor of the internet, the mechanic who tells you that no, you cannot put a jet engine on a compact sedan just because it looks cool. But Derek was all jet engine. By the way, if you enjoy watching corporate trains derail in slow motion while sipping your morning coffee, do me a quick favor and hit subscribe and maybe give this a like. It helps the algorithm find more people who appreciate the fine art of professional disaster. And frankly, it keeps me motivated to type this out instead of throwing my laptop into the river. Thanks. The trouble started small, as it always does. It was not an explosion, it was a series of skipped maintenance tickets. Derek's first executive order was to trim the fat in the engineering department. In his mind, fat meant anyone who was not shipping new features every 48 hours. He looked at my team, the people who handled database sharding, load balancing, and compliance encryption, and saw dead weight. We were the department of refusal. He wanted a department of compliance. Eric, he said to me during our first one-on-one meeting, leaning back in a chair that was ergonomically designed for people who actually do work. I feel like your team is stuck in 2018. We need velocity. We need to move fast and break things. If we break things, Derek, I said, my voice flat, holding onto my coffee mug like it was a holy relic, our clients lose financial records. We are not a social media app. We are holding the digital wallets of half the Fortune 500. If we break things, we get sued into the Stone Age. He blinked. That slow blank blink of a man who has heard words but has not processed their meaning. Right, compliance. But let us automate the compliance. Yes, I am bringing in some consultants, high-energy guys. They worked with me at my last startup. They are going to help you loosen up the pipes. Loosen up the pipes is technology speak for removing the safety valves so the sewage flows faster. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. It is a specific sensation I have not felt since the great outage of 2016. It is the premonition of a pager beeping at 3 in the morning on a Sunday. The consultants arrived a week later. They were clones of Derek, wearing tighter pants and carrying laptops covered in stickers for cryptocurrency exchanges that had already gone bankrupt. They did not ask for documentation. They did not ask for the system architecture maps. They just asked for root access. We cannot give you root access until you pass the security clearance, I told them. Derek said, we have carte blanche, one of them said, smirking. His name was Bryce Miller, and he carried himself with the smug arrogance of someone who had never faced a real server crash. Derek can say the moon is made of cheese, I replied. But until security clears you, you are guests. I walked away, feeling their eyes drilling holes into my back. I knew I had just put a target on myself. I was the friction. I was the legacy mindset. That night at 2:14 in the morning, my phone buzzed. It was not a call. It was a frantic automated alert from the primary database cluster. High latency, packet loss. Something was eating the bandwidth. I logged in from my home office, a quiet room that smelled of old books and wood polish, and saw it. Someone had deployed a new microservice to production without going through the staging environment. It was a social feature nobody asked for, and it was querying the entire user database every 3 seconds. It was sloppy, it was dangerous, and it had Derek's authorization code attached to the override. I killed the process. I rolled back the update. I saved the system from a cascading failure that would have wiped out service for the entire East Coast. My heart was hammering against my ribs, not from excitement, but from rage. They were playing with live grenades in a munitions depot. The next morning at the daily stand-up meeting, Derek walked in beaming. Great work on the new social deployment. Guys, we saw a massive spike in activity last night. The spike in activity was the server screaming for mercy, I said, cutting through the applause. I had to roll it back, Derek. It was crashing the load balancers. It was not optimized. The room went silent. Derek's smile did not drop, but his eyes went cold. Eric, he said, his voice dripping with condescending patience, you have to stop focusing on the problems. We are celebrating wins here. Maybe if you spent less time rolling things back and more time leaning in, we would be further along. That was the moment. The uneasy calm was over. I was not just an employee anymore. I was an obstacle. And Derek was the type of man who did not drive around obstacles. He ran them over. But he did not know that I was not a speed bump. I was a spike strip. And I was already starting to take screenshots. The freeze-out did not happen all at once. It was a gradual lowering of the temperature, like being in a walk-in freezer, where the dial is nudged down 1 degree every hour. You do not realize you are hypothermic until you cannot move your fingers. It started with the calendar invites. For 8 years, I had been a mandatory attendee for the Architecture Review Board. It was the Tuesday morning gathering where we confessed our system's sins and prayed to the gods of uptime. 2 weeks after the rollback incident, I logged in to find my Tuesday morning wide open. No meeting. I messaged the project manager, a nervous woman named Chloe Davis, who survived by blending into the beige wallpaper. Hey Chloe, is the meeting canceled this week? Oh, hi Eric, the reply came, the indicator dots pulsing for an agonizingly long time. No, Derek restructured the meeting. It is called the Innovation Sprint now. He said it is for ideation leads only. He did not want to waste your time since you handle the legacy stuff. Legacy stuff. That was the new label. I was not the senior backend oversight lead anymore. I was the curator of a museum nobody wanted to visit. I walked past the glass-walled conference room later that morning. Inside, Derek was standing on the table, literally standing on the mahogany table, drawing erratic circles on a whiteboard. The consultants, Bryce Miller and Blake Higgins, were nodding furiously. My team, the senior engineers who actually knew how the code worked, were absent. Instead, the room was filled with junior developers and product managers who thought scalability was just a buzzword you put in a pitch deck. They looked like they were planning a social event, not a software deployment. Then came the physical displacement. Eric, great news. The human resources message pinged me. We are redesigning the floor plan to encourage organic collisions and cross-pollination. We are moving your desk closer to the server room so you can be near the hardware you love so much. The translation was clear. We are moving you to the back corner next to the noisy air conditioning intake and the bathroom where nobody will see you. I packed my box, my ergonomic chair, my dual monitors, and my carefully organized stack of documentation. I moved to the Siberia of the office. It was darker back there, the air stale. But from my new vantage point, I had a direct line of sight to the main network patch panel. It was poetic, really. They pushed me into the darkness, forgetting that the darkness is where you see everything clearly. Derek stopped making eye contact in the hallway. If we passed, he would suddenly become engrossed in his phone, typing furiously at nothing. The emails kept coming, passive-aggressive masterpieces copied to the entire leadership team. The subject lines spoke of deployment velocity and removing roadblocks. Derek wrote that he noticed some drag on our deployment velocity, and that we seemed to be getting hung up on risk assessment protocols that were outdated. He wrote that we needed to trust our talent, and that he was authorizing a new streamlined approval process to not let the naysayers hold us back. He did not name me, but everyone knew who the naysayer was. He was isolating me, painting me as the bitter old guard who hated progress. He was turning the company culture against competence. I sat in my dark corner and watched the metrics. The new streamlined process meant they were skipping code reviews. Error rates were creeping up. There was a 0.5% increase in failed logins and a 1.2% increase in database timeouts. Small numbers to a chief executive officer, but to me, they were cracks in the dam. I started eating lunch alone at my desk. Before I would join the other leads, but now sitting with me was a political liability. I saw people I had mentored, people I had hired, look away when I entered the break room. I did not blame them. Mortgage payments do not care about loyalty. But the isolation gave me something valuable: time and focus. Since they were not inviting me to meetings, I did not have to listen to Derek blather on about artificial intelligence. I had 8 hours a day to dig. I started auditing the third-party integrations Derek's pet consultants were pushing through. One afternoon, I found a bill, a monthly invoice for a cloud optimization tool that cost $40,000 a month. I had never heard of the tool. I dug into the vendor details. The company had been formed 3 months ago. The registered address was a post office box in Delaware. The chief executive officer of this vendor was this guy who just happened to be in a lot of Derek's college fraternity photos on social media. I printed the invoice. I did not run to human resources. Human resources works for the company, and right now the company was Derek. I folded the paper, slipped it into my folder, and prepared to document this clear breach of fiduciary duty and potential forgery under California Penal Code Section 470. The paper trail was starting to look like a roadmap to federal prison. Toby West, a junior developer who was barely 22, walked over to my desk. He looked pale, holding his laptop like it was a ticking bomb. "I think I messed up," he whispered, glancing around to see if anyone was watching him talk to the office pariah. "Derek told me to push the new payment gateway API. He said we did not need to run the regression tests because it was low risk. But Eric, the transaction logs are looking weird." I motioned for him to pull up a chair. "Show me," I said. He opened his screen. I scanned the raw logs and my blood ran cold. The new gateway was dropping encryption headers on 5% of transactions. It was not just a bug, it was a massive security leak. Credit card numbers were passing through in plain text for split seconds. "Fix it," I said quietly. "Roll it back now." But Derek said, "I do not care what Derek said. If this leaks, we go to prison." "Do you look good in orange, Toby?" He shook his head. Terrified. "Roll it back," I told him. "I will take the heat." He did. The error log stopped. The system stabilized. 10 minutes later, Derek stormed out of his office, his face red. He marched straight to my corner, the consultants trailing behind him like hyenas. "Did you authorize a rollback on the payment gateway?" he demanded, loud enough for the whole floor to hear. "Yes," I said, not standing up. I kept typing. "That was a strategic deployment. You are undermining my authority." "That deployment was leaking credit card data, Derek," I said, turning to face him. "I saved us from a class action lawsuit." He sneered. "You are paranoid. It was a glitch. You are reacting to ghosts because you are scared of the future." He leaned in close. "You are on thin ice, Eric. Very thin. Next time you touch my deployments, you won't just be moved to the corner. You will be moved to the street." He spun around and walked away. The office was dead silent. I turned back to my monitor. My hands were not shaking. I opened a terminal window and set the permissions on my hidden log directory to restricted access. If he wanted a war, he was going to get one, but he would not see the soldiers. My soldiers were lines of code, and they were already marching. The air in the office had changed from anxious to toxic. It felt like walking through a mist of electrified, nervous sweat. The rollback incident had not just angered Derek. It had embarrassed him. Men like Derek treat embarrassment like a mortal wound that can only be healed by the destruction of the witness. I knew a setup was coming. You work in corporate America long enough. You learn the rhythm of the hit job. It is never a direct firing that costs money in severance and unemployment hearings. No, they want you to quit, or they want cause. They need a catastrophe they can pin on your chest, like a scarlet letter. It arrived on a Thursday. Thursday is the coward's day for disasters. It gives them Friday to spin the narrative and the weekend to let the outrage die down. Derek called an emergency product meeting. I was not invited, naturally. But the walls in our office were glass, and sound travels through the air vents if you know where to listen. They were launching the artificial intelligence customer assistant at 2 in the afternoon. I knew the code for this assistant. I had reviewed the early pull requests before my access was throttled. It was a hastily cobbled-together wrapper around a generic language model with zero safeguards for database query limits. Basically, if a customer asked the bot to list all transactions for the last 10 years, the bot would try to do it instantly. For every customer I checked, the server load was already running at 75% capacity, because of the unoptimized social features from last month. At 1:55 in the afternoon, I sent an email to Derek, copying the chief technology officer, who was currently on a sabbatical and probably not reading, and the head of our legal department. The subject line was urgent warning regarding the artificial intelligence deployment. I explained that based on previous load tests, the current infrastructure could not handle the projected query volume without caching, and that we risked a total backend lockup. I strongly recommended delaying until we scaled the read replicas. I hit send. It was my paper shield. At 2 in the afternoon, Derek pressed the button. I saw him do it. He high-fived Bryce Miller, the consultant, and they popped a bottle of champagne. At 2:03 in the afternoon, the dashboard on my second monitor turned from green to yellow. At 2:05 in the afternoon, it turned red. At 2:06 in the afternoon, the silence in the office was shattered by the Slack notification sounds. It was the machine gun fire of 1,000 users reporting bad gateway errors. The site was down, hard down. I sat on my hands. This was the hardest part. Every instinct in my body screamed to open the terminal, kill the processes, and reroute the traffic, but I could not. If I touched it, it became my outage. Eric! Derek was running toward my corner, sweating. The site is down. What did you do? I did not do anything, Derek. I am sitting right here. You touched the load balancers, he yelled. I saw your email. You tried to block the deployment, and now you have sabotaged it. Derek was screaming, actually screaming, building the narrative in real time. He needed a villain, and I was right there. Derek, the database is locked, I said. The artificial intelligence bot is overloading our own internal network. You need to kill the bot. No, the bot is key to the third quarter strategy, he replied. Fix the database. Scale it, do your job. I cannot scale a database that is being hammered by 1,000,000 queries a second, I answered. Kill the bot. I am not killing the feature, he snapped. You are incompetent. Fix it, or you are done. He stormed back to the war room. I looked at the screen. Clients were calling. I could see the support ticket queue exploding. Users could not access payroll, and they could not export tax data. This was not just inconvenient. This was costing companies millions. I had a choice. Let it burn and prove him wrong, or save the company and let him blame me. I sighed. I am a professional. I could not let the clients burn. I bypassed the standard controls. I logged directly into the cloud console using a backup administrative key I kept for emergencies, one Derek did not know existed. I did not kill the bot, as he would check that. Instead, I throttled its bandwidth to 1%. To the outside world, the bot would just seem slow, but the database queries dropped instantly. The red dashboard turned yellow, then green. The site came back up. Derek walked out of the war room 5 minutes later, looking triumphant. See, he shouted to the room. I told you it was a configuration issue. We pushed through. Eric finally did his job. He walked over to my desk, leaning down, his voice a low hiss. I know you tried to tank this launch. I know you throttled it to make me look bad. We are going to have a serious talk about your future on Monday. He did not know I throttled it. He was guessing. But he was right about one thing. We were going to have a talk. I waited until he left for his victory dinner at 5 in the afternoon. I stayed. I opened the raw logs from the incident. I found the timestamps. I found the specific queries that crashed the system, and then I found something else. In the chaos of the crash, while the security protocols were failing, someone had executed a bulk export of user data. It was not the bot, it was an external user. I traced the internet protocol address. It matched the cloud optimization vendor from the fake invoice. Derek was not just incompetent. He and his friends were stripping the copper wiring out of the walls while the house was burning. The humiliation washed away, replaced by a cold, steely resolve. I was not sad anymore. I was hunting. I did not just save the logs. I mirrored the entire production environment's activity stream to a private encrypted server in my basement. Every keystroke, every query, every login. You wanted a legacy, Derek, I whispered to the empty office. I will build you a monument. There is a specific kind of silence that falls over an office when everyone knows a predator is feeding, but nobody wants to look at the blood. That was the atmosphere in the weeks following the artificial intelligence crash. Derek was riding high on the success of the launch, spinning the temporary outage as unprecedented demand. The board ate it up. They saw charts going up and to the right. They did not see the structural cracks widening underneath. I became a ghost in my own department. I stopped speaking in meetings unless directly asked a yes or no question. I stopped offering advice. I simply existed, a quiet figure in the corner, typing rhythmically. They thought I was defeated. In reality, I was building the dashboard. I spent my nights coding a custom interface, not the flashy, colorful dashboards Derek loved, full of vanity metrics and pie charts that meant nothing. Mine was black text on a dark gray background, raw data. I called it the truth. I aggregated everything. I pulled the code commit logs to show that Derek's consultants were pushing code with zero peer reviews. I pulled the cloud billing data to visualize the skyrocketing costs of their optimization. I pulled the security audit logs to track every time Derek authorized a policy override. But the centerpiece was the uptime lie. Derek's reports to the board claimed 99.99% uptime. He achieved this by redefining uptime. If the login page loaded, he counted it as up, even if the backend database was on fire and no one could actually perform any tasks. My dashboard pinged the actual services every 10 seconds and calculated the real uptime. The real uptime was 84.2%. For an enterprise software company, 84% is not just bad. It is a breach of contract. It is refund territory. It is death. I felt like a detective in a film, sitting in a staked-out car, drinking cold coffee, watching the suspect dig a hole in the desert. One Tuesday, I caught a break. Derek was presenting to the board of directors via video conference. He was in the main conference room, and I was at my desk, listening in through the open door. He liked to hear his own voice echo. As you can see, Derek boomed. Our transition to the new architecture is seamless. We have reduced headcount costs in the legacy maintenance sector and reallocated budget to artificial intelligence growth. I accessed the internal network traffic. I saw the connection to the board's secure portal. It was a standard read-only interface where board members could see high-level statistics. I had an idea, a dangerous career-ending idea. I could not just tell them. They would not believe me. I was the disgruntled employee. Derek was the golden boy. They needed to see it. I wrote a script, a simple packet injection script. I found the endpoint that fed the board's dashboard. I did not hack the board. I hacked our feed to them. I created a shadow channel. I did not activate it yet. That was for the endgame. I just installed the plumbing. A tiny dormant line of code that, when triggered, would swap Derek's fake charts with my truth dashboard. I tested it locally. It worked perfectly. One keystroke and the illusion would shatter. On Wednesday morning, 2 days before the big board meeting, I tried to log into the primary oversight console. Access denied. I tried my backup credentials. Access denied. He had revoked my access early. He had violated the terms of the performance improvement plan that Valerie Pierce from Human Resources had forced me to sign. The plan had demanded that I hand over all administrative access to the consultants by Friday. They wanted the keys to the kingdom, and they wanted me to dig my own grave. Toby West walked over, looking terrified. "Eric, I cannot fix the replication lag," he whispered. The consultants turned off the safety buffers because they wanted real-time analytics for Derek's demo. I looked over at Derek's office. He was laughing, throwing a foam football with Bryce Miller. They had locked me out to stop me from interfering, and in doing so, they had locked themselves inside a burning building. "Toby, document everything in an email," I said. "Send it to yourself to me and print a physical copy. Then do nothing. If it crashes, let it crash." I watched my private truth dashboard. The replication lag was climbing. 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 30 seconds. The system was beginning to dissociate. Users in California were seeing data from 5 minutes ago. Users in New York were overwriting data that had not synced yet. It was a silent data corruption event. Then my personal phone rang. "Is this Eric?" a gruff, unfamiliar voice asked. "This is Harold Dunlap from the board. We are seeing some irregularities in the report Derek sent over. He says it is a rendering issue on our end. Is that true?" "Mr. Dunlap," I said, keeping my voice steady, "I am currently locked out of the system. I cannot verify any rendering issues because my credentials were revoked this morning." Silence on the line. "Locked out? You are the oversight lead." "Not anymore, sir. I have been placed on a performance plan." Harold Dunlap's voice went cold. "Be at the office tomorrow, Eric, for the all-hands meeting. You are invited now." The line went dead. I had one access point left. They had forgotten about the town hall broadcast system. I had built it 5 years ago, and I still had the master key for the audio-visual setup. Derek was planning to fire me publicly at the all-hands meeting. He wanted a show. I was going to give him one. The meeting began at 9:50 in the morning. The remote employees were logged into the stream. The board of directors was dialed in on the massive main screen. Harold Dunlap was watching. Derek took the stage, wearing a headset microphone. "Welcome, team, welcome, board," Derek started, pacing the stage. "When I joined 6 months ago, I promised a revolution. I promised to trim the fat, to clear out the cobwebs of the past." He clicked the clicker, and the screen flashed a picture of a rocket ship. "And we have done it, despite the resistance, despite the sabotage from those who feared change. We have identified the root cause of our technical issues." He clicked the next slide. It was my team's chart with my name circled in red. "Today, I am announcing a restructuring. The oversight department is being dissolved, replaced by our partners at CloudOps." He smiled. "Let us look at the results." I hit enter on my keyboard. Derek expected to see a bar graph showing a 20% reduction in server costs and a 99.9% uptime. Instead, the screen turned a stark terminal black. Rows of neon green and blood red text scrolled rapidly. "System status critical. Database integrity 64% corrupted. Unauthorized data export detected to the Cayman Islands. Real-time uptime 81.4%. The room went silent. Derek clicked the clicker frantically. Alert. Billing gateway encryption disabled by Derek admin. Alert. 14,000 failed transactions. Alert. Shadow invoice detected. Vendor CloudOps. $40,000 a month. 0 deliverables. "What is this?" Derek stammered. "Cut the feed." Mike, the audio-visual tech, looked at me. I gave him a nod. He did nothing. "This is a hack," Derek screamed. "Eric is doing this." I stood up. "I am not hacking the company, Derek," I said. "That is the live production server. That is the reality you have been hiding." On the screen, Harold Dunlap leaned into his camera. "Derek, is that accurate? Are we seeing live logs?" "It is fabricated," Derek yelled, sweat beading on his forehead. I tapped a key. The screen showed the private chat logs where Derek and Bryce Miller planned to disable safety checks, bypass reviews, and blame me for the crash while cashing out options. The double doors at the back of the atrium burst open. It was Harold Dunlap, the chairman, flanked by 2 board members and a team of lawyers. They walked toward the stage. Harold did not look at Derek. He looked at the screen. System integrity restoring 90%. Harold turned to Derek. "Derek, you are fired. You cannot do this," Derek snapped. "We voted 10 minutes ago," Harold interrupted. "This is for cause. Gross negligence, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty, violating California Penal Code, Section 470 for the forgery of invoices. Security will escort you out. Leave your laptop and phone." 2 large security guards stepped out of the darkness and dragged Derek away. The consultants tried to sneak out, but Harold pointed them out. "Sit down," he said. "Legal wants a word about that $40,000 invoice." I walked to the podium and plugged my laptop directly into the hardline. The screen flickered, restoring backup from cold storage. The red text turned yellow, then green. Replication lagged down to 0. "Mr. Dunlap," I said, "we lost about 3 hours of transactions, but I can reconstruct them from the raw logs I mirrored." "You mirrored the logs?" Harold asked. "I did not trust the server, sir." Harold turned to the microphone. "The all-hands meeting is over. We will reconvene at 2 in the afternoon. For now, Eric has work to do, and I suggest we let him do it." The room erupted. The engineers and support staff were cheering. Toby West was smiling. The next morning, my old desk in the main pod was reinstated. A vase of flowers sat on it with a note, "Thank you, the team." The company wiki was updated, and my name was listed as Chief Technical Officer. Harold Dunlap walked by and leaned against my cubicle wall. "Derek is being sued, and the consultants are facing fraud charges," he said. "You know, Eric, most people would have just quit. Why did you stay?" I looked at the server room glass, watching the lights blink in that steady, hypnotic rhythm. "I built this system, Harold," I said. "It is my code. You do not let arsonists burn down your house just because the landlord is an idiot." Harold nodded, a look of genuine respect on his face. "Well, the house is yours now. Keep the lights on." I put my headphones on, checked the system uptime, and got back to work. The chaos was over, the machine was running perfectly, and the silence was finally peaceful.